Welcome guys to another episode with the Doomed Hell. Yes, another day, another episode. I haven't uploaded in a while because I've kind of been trying to get used to my classes. This semester I have a lot more classes than typically, and so I kind of have to deal with that stuff first. I don't know what I want to do with the channel. I have a lot of ideas, but I don't know exactly where I want to go. I think what I'll probably start doing is PC part picker showcases and potentially thread showcases, but that'll be in a bit. What I do want to talk about today is Far Cry again. I think this is the third video on Far Cry. The first two were kind of reviews or kind of trying to look through thematically what Far Cry is about. Today I actually just want to go through the things I wish Far Cry would have in the future. What would bring me back to the series, because I'm not buying the next Far Cries that have come out. I'm not buying New Dawn, and I'm not buying Far Cry 6. There's no fucking way. These games are SJW trash. They no longer demand really any skill for me. That is that I don't really need to, play skillfully to beat the game, which, I mean, is the whole point of playing Far Cry, right? So I'm not going to go back to the series. However, I did want to check out what could be a good idea for Far Cry. And there's really two different ways I could look at it. The first way is kind of let's start with the hard way. So the hard way is that I think Far Cry should start going in the survivalist dimension. That is to say, the game is going to be a lot more about survival and about your resources than previous Far Cries. And the reason why I think they should go this route is because the biggest issue with Far Cry is that you're constantly bombarded with things to do, but you're always insurmountably rewarded. So when you go to the next mission or when you go to the next thing to do, you kind of just do it because it's a chore. You're not doing it because of the reward anymore. And that's really unfortunate. There's also a lot of other things that are wrong with Far Cry, such as going in Far Cry 5 and just kind of driving around. You realize that NPCs just kind of spawn, and because the game doesn't really know where the enemy NPCs and the ally NPCs should be, they kind of just spawn randomly, and a lot of times either that causes crashes, car crashes that is, or that causes a lot of chaos that just kind of came out of nowhere and kind of useless to the immersion. And honestly, it's just free kills. It's literally just free resources, so that's kind of useless. So my idea would be to kind of revamp all of that, bring back the immersion by basically making the game a lot more about the survival aspect. So that is crafting, that's trying to get resources through different kinds of missions, side missions. And I do think that it's best that Far Cry goes back to having main missions and having side missions, and those two things being completely separate. So I think that they should go back to game development, and instead of kind of making linear instead of making kind of like very basic computer generated side missions and just kind of using those for your main missions, they should go back to where your main missions felt like Call of Duty-esque missions. They felt super cinematic, and your side missions kind of felt on the side. And I think that they should either create more kinds of missions where a lot of them are cinematic and some of them are kind of side mission-y, or they should just have side missions and main missions in completely separate orders. Order, I don't mean order, I mean qualities. So that's what I think. Now, effectively, this is a good idea, but it's probably never gonna fucking happen for a lot of reasons. The main reason is that Ubisoft is a company that wants to publish games which make money, and Ubisoft is not really known for completely revamping ideas, especially in the last decade or so. The previous decade, when they did come out with Far Cry 2 and revamped it, that was different. This decade, I don't think they're going to do that. However, I do think that they should revamp Far Cry significantly. And the incentive behind it would be to bring back, or actually bring back the difficulty in the game. And that would be through multiplayer. I think that they should go back to the board and think of the potential business incentive to making a battle royale in Far Cry. Now, I don't think that in the state of Far Cry today, they could potentially make a battle royale in the Dunya engine. The Dunya engine has a lot of issues, and I say that with the deepest love of the Dunya engine. It is one of the most beautiful engines I've ever seen. It's able to make extremely beautiful free roaming games. I'm mostly thinking of Far Cry 4, not so much Far Cry 5. But the Dunya engine is definitely close to my heart in those scenarios. But I do think that there are big issues with the Far Cry engine. The main thing is that basically the engine kind of runs slow. It has a lot of like optimization issues, and because of that, it's not really able to run it at the speeds that you're hoping, looking at what you have in front of your screen. And I think this all comes down that there's a lot of detail that the Dunya engine is trying to generate in a short amount of time. But realistically, not all of that detail goes to your screen, especially when you're going in low qualities. You don't really get to see the kind of shaders and textures that the engine is able to handle. So I think that they should go back to the board, kind of modify the Dunya engine to allow less detail to potentially be generated, but faster generation of worlds. And I think this could be pretty useful for making this battle royale, especially if we want some of the things I'll talk about in a sec. The next thing is that I think that there should be an entire revamp of how character action schemas work. So kind of going through action scenarios and, like, for instance, walking motions, then pulling out gun motions, then crouching motions, and etc. etc. These kinds of actions are very jagged and not very smooth in the game. And we can easily tell that from just playing the game. If you're your own player, when you go from a free roaming area to a mission area, sometimes you'll see your gun reholster itself in your hands. And you see this more in Far Cry 3 and potentially in Far Cry 4, but in Far Cry 5 it started coming back a lot more prevalently. So this is kind of what I'm talking about, the animations and the actions in general. There are some times where you're shooting someone and you start falling, and your action is kind of jagged out. And I think that's because they're kind of using a classical way of generating actions. I think they should go back to the board and kind of self-generate, because the kind of level of generation that we have these days, our computers are powerful enough to run emulated generations, so animations that are kind of emulated on the spot. You can see that with like recoil animations, for instance. They don't just animate the recoil, they basically let the computer decide how the recoil is going to affect the gun. They should probably do a lot more of that when correcting the actions of a character. And this also goes to movement system. The movement system in Far Cry, although used to work pretty well, it was interesting how some rocks you couldn't go on and other rocks you could, because it had kind of a way of jumping on it. I think they should go back to the board and kind of bring that kind of self-generated movement as well, because this doesn't really work, and we've noticed that through Far Cry 4 and 5 especially. It doesn't really work with hills. A lot of hills, the game doesn't know if your character should be able to get on it or not, and it's really bad at doing that, versus other games such as like Warzone, where at least there the map is made so that you can't go on certain hills, or most hills are accessible to the character. I think that it would be a huge advantage for Far Cry, a game where hill climbing has become very popular, to kind of go back and smoothen out the movement system. Now, finally, I think that we're going to be talking about revamping of vehicle mechanics. And this is specifically for the Battle Royale. I think that it makes a lot more sense to make vehicles very hard to drive, just so that it gives a chance to other players that can't drive a chance to shoot and kill the driving vehicles. Now, all of these optimizations, and for what? What do I think the Battle Royale should be about? Well, as you know, Battle Royales, you typically spawn either dead center or you get to parachute down onto the map. I think that Far Cry has an environment where, or actually has more of like a theme where walking into the map on the side of the map would be a lot cooler. I think that the incentive to go to the middle of the map should change. So instead of it being that you're trying to survive, to be the last survivor, going to the middle of the map could be potentially very large loots for the main game. Or it could be that could give you legendary items if you do go to the middle of the game, but you are not necessarily forced to. You can escape the map from any of the escape routes, kind of how we see an Escape from Tarkov, which I've been playing recently, but I think this would go really well with the Far Cry style, where a lot of missions, especially missions where the CIA agent Willis is in it, where the escape route is the important part. So I think that would be really cool. I think that this game should be about crafting, like I said earlier, and more of the survival elements of the game. But there would be definitely elements of like shooting NPCs, killing militias, killing government officials or officials of this specific area's government, corrupt government, should I say, all the while figuring out other people that are in your map and killing them as well. Far Cry has never been really that good in making fast-paced missions possible. I think this title would basically kind of sketch out this kind of fast mission idea. I think the easiest way would be to basically put out on the map kind of mini papers which you can click on and pick a mission, and this would kind of show off on your mini map, and every mission is kind of close by, kind of like how Warzone does it, although a lot more Far Cry-ish. And these once you do a mission, everyone in your vicinity would be able to see you doing the mission, and of course, vice versa, the person doing the mission can also see if there's anyone that is chasing them in the mission. So every mission is kind of cooperative to a certain extent. From there, escaping the map would be, once you try to escape the map, there would be specific challenges you'd have to do. For instance, if you have a vehicle, like say a train, for instance, you would have to get some coal for the train, and you would obviously have to ask the locomotive instructor to set up the train properly. You would, if it were a planes, there would probably be a lot of planes. If it were a plane, then you need gas, and you would need specific things for the pilot, etc., etc. Now, what about the map size? I think that there would be two ways of putting the map size into the game. The first way would be the advertising way, and also kind of the smarter way for the developers, because it takes probably less time to make, is the biggest map that they have ever created. It would simply be one of the largest maps that Far Cry has ever seen, and it would allow for players to visit the map multiple times and have new experiences, or get to old areas and kind of get to see how big the map is. I also think that a lot of quests would be a lot of fun. If everyone's doing kind of their own quests, if you have like 150 people doing their own quests, you're much more likely to have them fighting each other. Now, of course, I do think it would be smart to have like 4-player co-op, maybe even 2-player co-op, but definitely have as many people as possible. Potentially even having NPCs that work for you, that would be really useful, although we've seen Far Cry really struggle with those mechanics. So the teammates, I don't know. The other system, and I think I personally want to patent this system because I think it's genius, is basically the if you've ever watched the movie Maze Runner, where the maze basically changes areas by having cubes of the maze or parts of the wall of the maze change places. That's exactly what I want for my game. I want a game where you have basically large areas which can be interchanged with other areas. So you would have, like, say 1,000 different kinds of areas into a square, or a circle that is composed of, let's say, 250 areas. Well, that makes a lot of combinations of areas that you can put at every place of the map. So it's not entirely fully generated, but it allows for players to have a lot of different interactions with the map. So that would be really cool. I think I would personally do that if I made a game. So that's basically what I want for the Far Cry Battle Royale. I think it's a great idea how that they could do it. It would really work for Far Cry, and in the themes and maybe in some of the mechanics. But of course, trying to do it, they would have to go next gen. They would have to revamp a lot of their physics engines. And seeing as Ubisoft really likes to just reuse and rehash the previous assets they had from previous games, I don't know if that's gonna ever happen. Far Cry 6 already had a lot of, like, small graphical revamps and animation revamps. So if this is gonna happen anytime soon, I don't think so. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and have a good day.